Welcome to the White Spring Bunker. These halls were built to safeguard some of the most prestigious members of the United States government. We are Modus, and we are always looking for men and women capable of helping us restore what has been lost. In return, we offer this, a new enclave and our refuge from the world above. Please, take your time and look around. The Colonel has made great strides restoring this place to its former glory. Welcome, member, to our little enclave.
Greetings, members. As always, I am the Operative, your designated tour guide and host here at the White Spring. Colonel Valeria has reluctantly agreed to work with the Overseer to develop and deliver a Scorched Plague Vaccine to the newcomers who have arrived in Appalachia. Major Lilith has been sent to Crater to speak to Meg, the leader of the Raiders, while Lieutenant Cindy is traveling to Foundation with Day, the Overseer's formidable bodyguard. This mission is far too critical to leave anything to chance, and the Colonel will ensure its success by any means necessary. Some content in this episode may be disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Colonel, we just received a report from the Vantage. Team Gamma reports 12 Blood Eagle KIA. 2 kidnapped settlers have been released. 1 settler being returned for medical care. Unfortunately, the other settler passed away on site from previous injuries. But in the process, the entire outpost was razed to the ground. If you wanted to send a message, I'd say you did.
Colonel Valeria leafed through the briefing, pulling out photographs denoting the dead and destruction of the Raider stronghold.
Our casualties?
Operative Paulson suffered only minor wounds and was treated on site.
Excellent. Please let me know as soon as Team Gamma returns.
Of course, Colonel.
Stein saluted, gathered the remaining briefs, and exited the Colonel's office. Valeria rubbed the side of her face and winced. The punch she took during the Raider ambush still hurt, and she'd spent several hours in the infirmary while Dr. Harefield had readjusted her artificial eye. While she hadn't minded the opportunity to practice her skills, it was disturbing that the Blood Eagles were getting so bold as to move into generally pacified regions like the forest. It was past time to take corrective action. Annihilating the Vantage, overlooking the White Spring itself, had been merely the first step in dealing with the problem.
Modus?
Yes, Colonel?
Please open a new operations file, codename Werewolf. Enable Sigma Omega security.
Done, Colonel.
Good. Start tracking all known Blood Eagle encampments and assign additional monitoring assets to track their radio transmissions.
Anything else, Colonel?
Yes, Modus. I'd like you to review our internal personnel files, along with any external assets for suitable team members.
What parameters should we utilize in our selection process?
First, prioritize trackers, combat specialists, and long-range recon assets. Second, they must be able to work undercover. This will be an off-the-books operation, so plausible deniability must be maintained. And lastly, and perhaps the most important, they have to be desperate enough, or crazy enough, to work with Lilith.
We will begin our analysis.
Thank you, Modus. I'd like to have the team selected before Lilith returns from Crater.
Of course, Lilith's current assignment was part of their primary mission. Valeria hadn't wanted to work with the Overseer, but she could see the logic in her proposal. It was now Lilith's job to convince Meg and the Crater Raiders to cooperate with their vaccine plans. Lucky for them, the solution to that particular problem literally stumbled into one of their patrols. The Foundation problem, on the other hand, was a different issue. Unlike the Raiders, Valeria's operatives had no luck in infiltrating the settlers. They were extremely suspicious of newcomers, and if the Overseer had already been in contact with them, that complicated matters.
How are we going to convince a bunch of insular settlers about a dangerous plague none of them have probably seen?
Suddenly, Valeria had an idea.
Modus?
Yes, Colonel.
That wounded survivor from the Vantage operation, was she from Foundation?
From what limited data we have obtained, we believe she is.
Good. Please move her to the isolation wing. I have an idea.
Very good, Colonel.
The Overseer and Day might think they were a step or two ahead, but if Valeria stole a march instead, they would prove useful, very useful, at least until she figured out how to remove them from the board. And once Cindy returned from the Divide, Valeria would brief her personally. The Colonel's door chimed, breaking her concentration.
Yes? Who is it?
Sergeant Muller, ma'am.
Ah, come in, Sergeant.
The sergeant walked in his dress uniform, which was unusual. Normally, he was dressed in his field gear, or mechanic's overalls, while he was working on his power armor. The Colonel suspected what was coming.
What can I do for you, Sergeant?
Well, Colonel, I mean, now that Team Alpha isn't running together much anymore, well, I wanted to talk to you about a reassignment.
Okay, Sergeant. Continue.
So, as you know, I've been helping run the caravans up to Morgantown for a while now, and I know you're considering establishing a permanent post up there.
We are, Sergeant, but go on.
And, well, I know all the folks up there, and I'm sure they'd appreciate having me around full time.
Sergeant, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and we might need to head back out on a moment's notice.
The sergeant fidgeted in his chair, obviously wanting to say something else.
I was also considering promoting you, since it's far past time for you to become an officer.
That sounds swell and all, and I appreciate the thought, Colonel. I really do, but, I've been thinking about settling down, and especially after the bog. Well, I'm not quite as fast on my feet as I used to be, and once an NCO, always an NCO.
Sergeant, what's really going on?
Melissa's pregnant.
Not much could take the Colonel by surprise, but her mouth actually dropped at the news.
I'm sorry, Colonel. I mean, we just kind of fell in together. She treats her kids, her students, like her kids. And after all these years, it just felt like a normal life again.
No, Sergeant, you don't need to explain. And honestly, I owe you for saving my life. Twice.
The sergeant actually blushed a little, from embarrassment.
And Edward. That's wonderful news. I'm very happy for you, and Melissa as well. If we're going to continue our good work here, we need people to feel like they can get back to some sense of normalcy.
And we're planning on getting married, too, if that was a concern of yours.
Actually, not my biggest concern at the moment.
I just thought it would probably be a good idea.
Like I said, Sergeant, I owe you. In fact, I'll approve the transfer right away. We're still a few weeks from getting a whole team together for the garrison, but with you there, I don't think we'll have anything to worry about.
Valeria reached into her desk and pulled out a small folder, handing it to the sergeant.
What's this?
We still do things by the book here. Fill that out and give it to the ops team. They'll get you settled and equipped to head out with the next caravan. But, protocol aside, don't think you can't come back when you like, because you'll always be welcome here, Sergeant.
Thank you, ma'am.
Valeria stood up and reached across her desk, extending her hand to him. Muller stood up, and instead of taking it, gave her a parade-quality salute. She returned his salute, and then took his proffered hand.
I'd wish you well, Sergeant, but I know you'll be well. Congratulations. God bless the Enclave, and God bless America.
Muller straightened his uniform jacket before leaving the office with his transfer papers. The colonel felt a twinge of regret in watching him leave, but there was no good way to get him to stay either. Always looking after her assets, Valeria could still make use of him at Morgantown, and it would give her another chess piece to work with as well. She had to admit it. It was the right thing to do, and every once in a great while, she had the pleasure of doing the right thing, for the right reasons. At least partially.
Modus?
Yes, Colonel.
Now that that's taken care of, I want to talk about our guest. I have a plan.
Auntie Meg!
Little Rara ran screaming through the hallways of the hub and nearly bowled over the raider leader by jumping into her arms. Meg always liked to portray the image of a hardened raider leader, but to her, the gang was her family. The thought of losing anyone hurt her deeply, especially when they got news that Rara was missing. Despite being incredibly annoying at times, Meg liked having her around as a reminder of simpler, better times.
It's so good to have you back, Rara. You had us all worried. And I had to keep Gale from tearing Appalachia apart looking for you.
Oh my, it was so much fun with teddies and explodey things and lots of fun!
Rara was nearly incoherent in her delight, so much so that Meg had to hold her just a little further away to keep her eardrums from bursting. Meg looked back down the corridor to see the familiar Gale walking next to the newcomer, Lilith, or as Rara liked to call her, Auntie Lily. She put Rara down, who then proceeded to run in circles around the hub before jumping into Gale's arms as well. The two of them were inseparable, and Meg hated to think what Gale might do if anything ever happened to Rara. The two of them headed over to their play area and would probably stay there the rest of the day.
So, I guess I have you to thank for getting our little mascot home.
It was nothing, Meg. Just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Mighty convenient, if you ask me.
Meg didn't believe in coincidences or luck. You made your own way in the world and took what it gave you.
Meg, seriously, a little birdie just gave me a little tweet.
One day, you're going to need to tell me more about this little birdie of yours. But your timing ain't that bad. I'm putting together a crew. They could use someone familiar with the area.
What's the job? Something fun, I hope.
Need to send a message to Appalachia that we're not to be fucked with. People been running scared lately about those Scorched. So I'm tasking a crew to go take out a big herd of them just down south.
That's a really bad idea, Meg.
Oh yeah? Smarty pants. You mind telling me why?
It's not just the Scorched you got to worry about. I know your guys can kill them easy. But it's what you can't fight that's gonna get you all killed.
Yeah? And what would that be?
It's a plague. Anyone you send down there is gonna probably get infected and come back here looking like those others. Just what do you think wiped everyone else out? They didn't die. No, Meg, you're fighting the very same people who were here before, just now turned into those things.
Then what are we supposed to do about it? My guys aren't just going to sit on their asses and wait for these things to show up on our doorstep. And I gotta show everyone that we're not going to be messed with either.
Well, about that, there is an inoculation, but it's limited. Some friends of mine have a plan, but you all got to get on board for it to work. If you don't, well, everything that happened before is going to happen again.
Sounds like a bullshit story to me.
Lilith reached into her pouch and pulled out a holotape.
If you don't believe me, Meg, then you should watch this.
Meg took the tape and walked over to a nearby console, inserting the tape into the drive. The screen flickered to life and showed the inside of a holding cell.
Holy shit. Is that Larry?
Larry was one of their raider scavengers, well liked by most of the camp. He would go the extra mile to find a lot of really rare junk.
Just keep watching.
There wasn't any sound, but Larry was obviously distressed, handcuffed to a small bed in the middle of the cell. He looked beat up, but there was a large bandage on his arm. The tape moved forward, showing Larry scratching at his arm, while he was sweating profusely. Slowly, his skin began to darken. Over what must have been a number of hours, shown in time-lapse, Meg watched her friend slowly transform into one of those scorched things. Greenish crystals erupted from his skin and his eyes started glowing. He pulled and pulled against the handcuffs, his mouth open, probably screaming or screeching until his arm finally came off in a whole piece, and he threw himself against the bars. A shadow appeared on the floor outside the cell, and a 10mm pistol came into the frame. It flashed once, and what once had been Larry collapsed onto the floor, twitched a few times, then lay still. The tape cut to black and ended. The raider leader felt her blood boiling, watching one of her family die practically in front of her. She pulled her pistol and twisted around, pointing it right at Lilith's face.
Just what in the hell did you do to him?
Lilith just stood there, looking disinterested.
Some friends of mine found him near Golly Mine. He was infected and badly hurt. They brought him back and patched him up. But it was already too late.
And you let him die? Killed him? Worse. You watched it happen.
Meg took a step forward, almost putting the barrel right between Lilith's eyes. Lilith didn't even blink.
Give me one good reason why I don't decorate the walls in here with your brains.
Lilith reached out and put her finger on the barrel, pushing it down ever so slightly, and looking Meg right in the eye.
I'll give you 2. First, your friend was already dead when we found him. He just didn't know it yet. And second, if you don't listen to what I have to say, every single one of you will end up exactly like him, including little Rara.
Lilith's calm demeanor unnerved Meg. She knew some of the worst back in the day, but even the gourmands didn't send chills down her spine like this one did. Slowly, Meg lowered her pistol and took a deep breath.
So, yeah. You got my attention. What do you want me to do?
Lilith just smiled and took out a folded piece of paper from her pack and handed it to the raider boss. Meg reached over, grabbed the paper and unfolded it. Skimming through it, she was fascinated by the details, until she got down to the bottom.
Nuka, what?
Exactly.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were 2 people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met, and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story. Available now.
Outside of Foundation, the main settler encampment in Appalachia, Lieutenant Cindy stood fuming. She had been waiting for her escort for more than 2 hours, and now it was starting to rain. Ever since leaving the Overseer's residence a week before, this day character she'd been saddled with had been nothing but a pain in the ass. Of course, Cindy had been excited after being briefed by the Colonel regarding her new assignment. They'd be working with the Overseer to get a vaccine for the Scorched Plague made and distributed to all of the newcomers to the region. She suspected Valeria didn't like the Overseer very much, but the Colonel stressed how important this mission was. For the plan to work, however, they needed to convince both the raiders and the settlers to accept their help. Major Lilith had already been working with the raiders at Crater, so it was Cindy's job to convince the settlers at Foundation how serious a threat the Scorched were, and how necessary it was to get this vaccine distributed. Meeting the Overseer again after more than a year was quite something. Cindy might have gone a little doe-eyed when she opened the door and came face to face with her. The look on the Overseer's face was hard to judge. It was almost like she was expecting someone else, but her initial frown quickly became a huge smile and a hug when she recognized her. They spent a couple of hours drinking coffee, eating pumpkin pie, and talking about everything that had happened over the past year. Cindy tried not to talk too much about what went on in the bunker, or anything else related to the new enclave, but it was hard, given the pleasant tone of the conversation. The Overseer asked a lot of questions about Valeria, and even asked about Lilith too, but those questions made Cindy uncomfortable, and she decided not to answer. When they finally got down to business, the Overseer invited a young man to the table. He must have been working downstairs because he was covered in grease and carried a wrench.
Davenport's just fine, Overseer. Just needed a bit of a motor adjustment.
Thank you, Day. I don't know what I'd do without you. Here, have a piece of mute fruit cobbler, fresh out of the oven. Oh, how rude of me. Let me get the formal introductions out of the way. Cindy, this is Day. He's been a lifesaver around here, literally. In fact, he was the one who found me over at the mountainside bed and breakfast last year. Thanks to him, I'm still alive and kicking today.
Overseer, I just did what anyone else would have done in similar circumstances.
Oh, Day, you really need to take credit where credit is due. Let me introduce you here to Cindy. She was quite the athlete and student in the vault. Always so proud of her. And just look what a fine young woman she's become.
Day reached across the table and shook Cindy's hand.
So, Cindy will be going with you to Foundation. Present them with the information we have and convince them how dangerous the plague is, and how necessary our plan is to help save everyone.
The Colonel had gone over the plan with Cindy in detail, so none of this was new to her. She didn't expect it would be too difficult to convince the folks at Foundation, given all of the evidence around Appalachia, and of course what she'd seen herself. What Cindy didn't mention was that the colonel gave her a little bit of extra information she could use in case the leadership there proved reluctant. It wasn't her first option, but a just in case. She wasn't entirely sure what was on the holotape that the colonel gave her, only that it should prove very persuasive to the folks at Foundation. Day said little during her chat with the overseer. Instead, he picked at his food and kept an eye on the door. Cindy thought he was rude, not very attractive, and certainly wasn't looking forward to having him in her company for the next couple of weeks either. But the colonel had been very clear that she was expected to work closely with the overseer and Day, because of the importance of their mission. Cindy suspected that there was a lot more going on that she wasn't aware of, but that was just the way of things. The colonel always seemed to be several steps ahead, and she was used to doing what she was told. They all agreed to get the factions on board for the vaccine, then use their combined resources to ensure delivery across Appalachia. The colonel even said she'd be talking to the Blue Ridge Caravan Company about helping making sure that even the most remote settlements were included in the process. Cindy had heard about the new caravan company, but hadn't met anybody from there yet. She heard they even had a ghoul merchant, which was just weird, since every ghoul she met so far just wanted to eat her. After they finished eating, the overseer gave Cindy another big hug.
It's been good to see you again. I hope you realize just how important this is. We 76ers have to lead now and fulfill the obligations given to us. I hope you can be a better part of the future, Cindy.
We're all going to do our best, Overseer.
The overseer took Day aside and spoke to him in a hushed voice. Cindy couldn't make out what was said, but Day nodded and whispered back. After they all said their goodbyes, Day met her outside and motioned for her to follow him down the road. As they traveled, Day said very little, if anything. He was definitely well trained and experienced in the wasteland. They both moved stealthily, avoiding small groups of Scorched and the super mutants which still infested Somerville. When they did have to fight, like on the outskirts of Charleston when they found a small group of Blood Eagles attacking a caravan, they efficiently dispatched them, with Day using his modified 10mm pistol, and Cindy wading in with her sledgehammer. After the fight, they made camp just east of some ruined mansions inside an old greenhouse. Amongst the overgrown ash roses and soot flowers, they found some corn and gourds which Day was able to cook up into a stew, mixed with some mole rat and rad rat. It might not have been a 4-course meal, but it was certainly better than the standard New Enclave field rations. As they sat around the small smoldering fire, Day looked up from his bowl.
You're not what I expected.
And what do you mean by that, exactly?
I expected, well, something else.
That's as clear as mud.
Day brushed the hair from his eyes and set down his bowl.
A fanatic, I guess. I've seen what your people do, and what they've done. For every good thing, I see 3 bad or worse.
We're helping. We're rebuilding and doing a lot more than most.
Spare me the propaganda. It's all about control. In many ways, you're no better than the Raiders. Taking what you want, even if most people don't realize it. And that colonel, well, she's the worst of the bunch. And I've dealt with Blood Eagles who were more trustworthy.
How dare you? You have no idea what the colonel has done. You weren't there in the bog. You didn't see what she sacrificed.
And how many people has she killed? How many people has she ordered you to kill? Every life lost is a tragedy. Don't we have enough out there trying to wipe us out without doing it ourselves?
Day's words brought Cindy back to the Sunnytop Ski Lodge and a young face framed with dirty blonde hair. Cindy shook the memories from her mind and glared at the young man.
I'm not trying to make you mad. I'm just speaking the truth.
Cindy averted her eyes, trying to calm herself. Despite his claim, he was obviously trying to rile her up, and she needed to prove that she wasn't going to be goaded into a fight with him. They sat in silence for almost an hour, finishing their food.
So, what kind of a name is Day, anyway?
Just a name, I guess.
Did your parents give it to you?
Don't remember my parents. I'm not sure what happened to them. I mean, sometimes I think I might, but it's all just a jumble for me. When I was younger, I mean a lot younger, I walked into this small settlement up north. Lots of nice people there, too. First thing they all said to me was, "Good day." So it just made sense that it was my name, right? I know. But it just stuck over the years. So, yeah, I'm just Day.
They didn't talk much after that, before taking turns getting some sleep and standing watch. The rest of the trip down to Foundation was uneventful. At least Day opened up a bit more. Their conversations were mainly around whatever area or settlement they were passing through at the time. They also encountered a few settlers from Foundation who were pleasant enough, if guarded in their conversations with them. The evening before they were supposed to arrive at Foundation, Day told Cindy he needed to make a quick detour. She wanted to go with him, but he said that it was personal business and that he'd meet her in the late morning so that they could go in together. When she woke up, Day was gone. At least he had left a note confirming what time he'd be back, but it left Cindy to trudge the rest of the way up to Spruce Knob, where Foundation had made its home. It certainly was a sight to see. The last time Cindy had been there was months before, as part of her training assignment. She'd been with a team to clear the area of ghouls. Now it looked like a small city had risen on the site. Thick walls of cut logs surrounded the entire area, with Foundation spelled out in large letters over the front gate. A flag, which Cindy assumed was the settlers, flew at the top of the mast of the Spruce Knob building. The entire area appeared to be bustling with people, with merchants and traders coming in and out, under the watchful eye of guards and turrets dotting the tops of the walls. Cindy checked her Pip-Boy and was expecting to see Day walking up the trail any minute. As the minutes dragged on, still no Day. She put her pack down on a nearby tree stump and waited, arms crossed, while nodding to people walking by. And she waited, and waited, and waited. And then it started raining. Day wasn't carrying a radio, said it made him feel uncomfortable, whatever the heck that was supposed to mean. So here Cindy stood, soaked, feeling more miserable by the minute.
Excuse me,
Yes?
is your name Cindy?
Yeah, it is.
That's great. Your friend, Day, has been in with Ward for the past hour and wanted to see if you were here.
He left me out here. I'm gonna kill him. Great. That's just great.
The guard motioned for her to follow, and follow she did, like a drowned cat, into Foundation itself. As soon as she got through the gate, her discomfort was forgotten. Inside, the hive of activity, even in a downpour, was evidence everywhere. There was an operating sawmill, several vendors, all run by Protectrons, a bar, housing, a gazebo, and people were everywhere.
Wow.
Cindy followed the guard up to a side trailer. He knocked twice on the door before it opened. Out stood an older man, dressed in a rugged flannel and cowboy hat. Looking Cindy up and down and obviously not impressed, he invited her inside. The interior was small, made up of a small kitchen area and a bedroom. Sitting at the kitchen table was Day, looking like the cat that ate the canary. Her face must have betrayed her feelings, because he immediately got up and apologized.
Sorry about that, Cindy. I completely lost track of time and ended up coming in the back way. But Ward and I have been talking about the Scorched, and I think we're ready to go see Paige.
Nice to meet you. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have had some dealings with these Scorched, but so far, they don't seem like much of a threat.
Oh, they are a huge threat. We've been fighting them for over a year now, and your people are in real danger.
Yeah, some kind of plague. It's beyond me, and your friend here has been trying to explain it to me for over an hour.
Sir, it is very important that you hear us out. We only want to help and make sure everyone is protected.
Ward, I know talk is cheap, but we're not asking for a lot. We just need your cooperation. In fact, we'll be doing all the heavy lifting and just need your go-ahead that you'll support what we're doing and get your people to go along as well.
My job is to keep this place protected. Raiders, I can see. Super mutants, I can see. This other thing you're talking about, well, that's above my pay grade, that's for sure. Anyway, Paige already knows you're here. Head over to the knob and take the elevator down. See what he has to say.
Cindy and Day left the trailer, and Day put his coat over Cindy's head to shield her from the rain. They walked past the vendor areas, noticing that all the Protectrons seemed to be named Sunny, before ending up at the base of the Spruce Knob. A big sign was placed to one side with an arrow pointing down that said, Paige's office.
After you.
Cindy stuck out her tongue at him before walking into the elevator. Day pushed the bottom button and they slowly descended. When they reached the bottom, they walked out into a large interior space filled with catwalks, trailers, and equipment. Cindy gazed in wonderment. The new enclave suspected there might be something underneath Spruce Knob, but nothing like this. She took a step off the elevator and was almost bowled over by a young woman sprinting down the hallway.
Sorry about that. Can't talk. Running.
Well, don't they seem to be a busy bunch?
Busy, productive, friendly. All the things the White Spring isn't.
Cindy frowned. She felt like she was being made a fool of. She pulled away from Day and walked towards the larger trailer area with Day following behind. Walking into what looked like to be an engineer's office, they found a large African-American man wearing overalls.
Hello, folks. You must be the outsiders that Ward told me about. So, what's this about a plague and you want to help?
Cindy and Dave both laid out everything about the Scorched Plague, and the Scorched Beasts, and what happened in Appalachia before the settlers arrived. Paige asked several questions, but appeared to be skeptical throughout.
You know, folks, we've been all around since the war and met plenty of people so far. We haven't had any problems with the others around here, except for those raiders. And it sounds like you want us to work with them or something.
Not quite. We just need everyone on board with our plan. That way, you can all be safe. Your people and theirs too. It's our goal to save lives now. We can always talk about how to live together later, but you have to be alive for that to be worth anything at all.
Well, that does make sense, but I'm still not sure about any of this. Hey, Aubrey!
Another man walked out of the back room, carrying an old multiscope.
This is Aubrey Williams. He's about as close to a scientist as we have around here. You tell him what you told me, and if he thinks it makes sense, well then, we'll help.
Cindy and Dave repeated exactly what they told Paige, but even Aubrey remained skeptical. That was when Cindy remembered what the Colonel gave her as a last resort.
Sir, I was told to give you this holotape if you still didn't believe us.
This wasn't part of the plan.
Paige took the holotape and walked over to a terminal, followed closely by Aubrey. Both Cindy and Dave walked behind them.
What the hell are you playing at?
Well then, maybe you shouldn't have left me out in the rain, you jerk.
Paige inserted the holotape and hit play. The screen in front of him came to life. At first, just a blank screen, but finally replaced by Colonel Valeria's face.
To the leadership at Foundation. My name is Colonel Valeria Faustina of the New Enclave. If you are viewing this, then you are still not fully aware of the dangers of the Scorched and the Scorched Plague to your people. I realize that it can be difficult to imagine, even today, that Appalachia was wiped out by a disease, but it is true, and if you refuse to cooperate, your people will suffer the same fate as the original residents of the region. What you are about to see is a recording made just last week. One of our teams rescued a number of prisoners from one of the local raider gangs. While most of them were fine and sent back to their settlements, one was injured and was brought back to us for medical attention. Unfortunately, this person was infected with the Scorched Plague. While infection can be prevented, once it has begun, it is untreatable. We were unable to do anything for her and she passed away. We were able to record the progression of this disease. I warn you, this will be difficult to watch, but for you to understand the dire circumstances we find ourselves in, you must.
The screen went blank again, to be replaced with a hospital bed, in what Cindy recognized as the isolation wing of the New Enclave bunker science section. In a bed was a young woman with red hair, hooked up to a variety of medical equipment.
My God, is that Kathy?
Paige didn't say a word, he just stared at the screen.
When we discovered our patient had been infected, we had to move her to an isolated section of our facility. We did all that we could, but you will see how the plague manifests itself.
The tape showed a time-lapse, with the woman on the bed struggling while being attended by medical protectrons. Green veins erupted along her arms and up her neck, all while her skin began to darken. There was no sound, but it appeared that she was screaming and struggling against the bonds which held her to the bed. Shortly, her entire body looked like it had turned to burnt charcoal, with eruptions of greenish crystals standing out on her extremities. Her eyes began to glow, and her struggles became more and more erratic. With one final spasm, she almost lifted her body completely off the bed before collapsing down, with the light disappearing from her eyes completely.
Our patient expired soon after this was recorded. We believe she might have been a member of Foundation, and if that is the case, we apologize that we were unable to do more for her. If you don't cooperate with our efforts to deliver an inoculation for this plague, what you have just seen is the future for every member of Foundation. Please, help us help you.
Cindy had to admit the Colonel could be very persuasive. She glanced over at Day, and he looked disgusted. Aubrey had his hand over his mouth and looked ashen white. Paige took a deep breath and ejected the holotape. He turned around and handed it back to Cindy.
That was Kathy Pollard. She was one of our best scavengers. She'd been gone for a while with her partner, but that wasn't unusual. I'd have to tell her family. I never imagined We've seen some horrible things in our travels, but it's worse even than the pit. Okay, I'm convinced. If you can help our people and prevent more of that, then we're on board.
Page held out his hand. Cindy took it proudly. She had no idea how the colonel could have foreseen such an occurrence, but she was happy that she had come prepared. Day forced a smile and shook Page's hand as well. The overseer wasn't going to be happy at all, and he was livid. None of this felt right, and he was worried that they'd just been played for fools. Page led them back to the elevator.
You two, if you need anything at all, just talk to Ward. I'll fill him in and let him know that we'll be hearing back from you soon. And thank you for all your help. Now, unfortunately, I have to go talk to Kathy's parents. If there's any way that her remains could be brought back here, I know they'd want to give her a proper burial.
Cindy told Paige that she'd see what she could do. They all headed back up and out again. The rain had stopped and it looked like the restaurant was open. She had heard that Sonny made the best hoagies, whatever those were, and maybe she should try one. She was feeling good and even turned and asked Dave if he wanted to go get something to eat. But when she turned around, he was gone.
Darn. And I was just beginning to think he was tolerable.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ariel.
And we're the hosts of the Legend of Zelda Lorecast, a podcast about all things Legend of Zelda, from Errol to Zora,
and all the fun things in between.
If you're ready to dive deep and learn more about the Legend of Zelda lore and everything surrounding it, come join us on Legend of Zelda Lorecast. You can find us on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
We hope to see you soon.
Colonel, we can confirm the patient has been identified as a resident of Foundation. Her wounds have been treated, and per your instructions, we have moved her to the isolation wing of the Science Center. Dr. Harefield was told the patient was released.
Thank you, Modus. Is the sample prepared and are you ready to begin the recording?
Yes, Colonel. Would you prefer the subject be sedated for the procedure?
No, Modus. That won't be necessary. I've already written a draft of my narration and wouldn't want to have to make major changes now. The time for the process has been confirmed?
Based on our calculations, the entire process should take less than 24 hours.
Good. I wouldn't want Cindy to be late for her meeting with the Overseer.
Colonel Valeria keyed her personal code into the keypad next to the isolation ward door. The light blinked green 3 times before sliding open. 2 medical protectrons walked down the hallway, scanning for any signs of contagion, ignoring the colonel's presence. Valeria walked down the hallway to a single occupied room. In the center was a bed with their patient. She was asleep at the moment, but it was time to wake her up. The colonel went over to the bed and rested her hand on the woman's forehead. The woman's eyes fluttered open.
Ooh, hello. They told me I'd be getting visitors. Not sure why they moved me all the way over here, but I guess I should thank you for taking care of me.
Well, we're glad you made it. And by the looks of it, you're not too bad off either. Our doctors have given you a mostly clean bill of health, minus your wounds, of course.
Kathy tried to lift her arms, but they were secured to the side of the bed.
Huh? What's this?
We have one more procedure we need to conduct, and we can't have you hurting yourself.
Wait, what are you talking about?
A medical protectron entered the room and walked up to the side of the bed.
We know that you're from Foundation, and we need something from them. Unfortunately, I don't think they'll cooperate without some enticement. So, we're going to show them exactly what they need to see. If it's any consolation, your sacrifice will save a great many lives, your friends and family included.
Let me go! I don't know what you're talking about. Let me go!
A large syringe filled with red liquid rose from the center of the protectron's hand. With its other hand, it reached down and took hold of Kathy's head, holding it to the side, exposing her carotid artery. She screamed into the pillow as the syringe was plunged into her neck, forcing the liquid directly into her bloodstream. Colonel Valeria carefully put plugs into each of her ears and watched as Protectron retracted the syringe and left the room. Kathy was left struggling and screaming in the bed, thrashing from side to side. Valeria took a few more steps back to the corner of the room, just outside of camera range, and sat down in a chair. Next to her was a small table with fancy lad snacks and several old possum brews. Valeria popped open the top of one of the beers and sat back in the chair, her expression unreadable.
Modus, please begin the recording.
Thank you again, members, for joining us here on The Modus Files. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe. And better yet, please leave a review to help others find our little enclave. You can also follow us on Twitter, @ModusFiles, for more information about our podcast, Fallout 76 content, and random musings on the Enclave. I'd also like to thank our cast, Pandora Beatrix as Colonel Valeria Faustina, XO1 King as Major Andrew Stein, Lucy Middleton as Major Lilith Alistair and Kathy, Maria Cheshire as Lieutenant Cindy Connors, Ryan Negrin as Day, Wendy Novosinski as the Overseer, Mark Harsworth as Ward, Eliza S. Christopher as Paige, my AOL password is Aubrey, Don McCormick as Meg, Void Maiden as Rara, Casual in a Corset as Jen, Rob Cunningham as the Foundation Guard, and Brad Williams as the voice of Modus and Sergeant Edward Muller. And a shout out to the Apocalyptic Aristocracy Discord, home to a great group of fellow creators, the Robots Radio podcast community and the rest of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, and Jeremiah Johnson, our favorite character artist who provided the wonderful character artwork you can find on our website. Lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. God bless the Enclave, and God bless America.
Members, we look forward to your next visit to our little enclave.